Call the Finance Committee to order. All members are present and accounted for, Alderwoman Finlayson and Alderman Payon. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the agenda as written.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the minutes from the July 7th meeting.
I'll second that.
All those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Next item on the agenda is supplemental appropriations. The first one is SA 1-22. A nice amount of money from whatever that virus is. COVID.
COVID-19, don't forget that.
Aid relief.
Yes, this is the appropriation of the CARES Act funds that are remaining to be spent in FY22. We didn't set up a budget for this during the budget proceedings because we didn't know exactly how much was going to be left. Mm-hmm. So this amount is meant for public safety salaries, plus there's a significant amount here to continue Laura's community outreach team for another 6 months, and to continue some contractual service arrangements such as the extra cost for the virtual meetings that we're going to continue to incur. And the deadline for spending the funds is December 30th. So we have to get this spent during the first 6 months of the year.
Questions from Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes, Ms. Dickinson, I think I missed something that you said. We received a copy of a grant request that's going to the county through the health department, I believe, for the, is it the no harms?
I think it's Laura's, what does she call it? Take care.
It was for about 150, the request is for $150,000.
Yeah, we're trying to get other funding for it as well, and she may already have an award. It's to continue the same effort, but this funding that's left here is about $50,000 remaining for her, which might not quite get her through the 6 months. So
who's the her?
Laura.
So I think there's two separate requests. You're talking about the one for no harm from the opioid program at the health department, that we're hoping that they will share some of their money with us so we can continue that program as well.
So this money has nothing to do with that money?
No.
Okay.
No.
This is the original money that came from the county to us. The first was the $4,250,000. And we have very little of that left, but they gave us a supplemental piece, the $550,000 award that came in December, and we spent a little of that. We have about $427,000 of that left.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, I do have another question. I had proposed doing the map of Forest Drive, which I am still working on. Actually, I was in a business yesterday. I hope the funding is set aside still for that project. It was in the original allocation. I think it was
Can you repeat that? For which project?
It's a map to support the businesses on Forest Drive, and it's called Shop Forest Drive.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that, so.
It was in the original list of expenditures. Mr. Gerald, you recall, I'm sure Miss Farrell, you?
Yeah, I vaguely recall, but I don't remember how much money that was asking for.
It was between $2,500 and $5,000.
It was in the original list of items that we proposed to spend use the CARES Act funding for. If you recall, there was a list of a table of all of the items, and that was included in one of the business recovery line items. So like she said, it was a small amount, $2,500. And
so as far as I know, has anything been expended on that? I don't recall any types of expenditures for that purpose. And so if we need to talk about whether or not we need to reserve some of this money for that purpose.
Yeah, so if it's still a project that the Alderwoman wants to make happen, then I guess we should do that.
It is definitely still happening.
Okay.
I thought it was going to be a small project, but there are over 1,000 businesses on Forest Drive.
Oh, wow.
So Ms. Wampler is helping me to put them all on a map. That's, it's turned into a bigger challenge, but nevertheless, it's something that we need to do, so it's all good.
Okay.
Thank you. And I just raised it because I didn't want anybody to forget that it's still in the works.
So, I'm inclined to vote yes to this, but when I looked at it, I said, I'd kind of like to know the distribution of this amount of money. It's a large amount of money. And even if I didn't ask for that, I have a feeling that 2 or 3 of my colleagues in my row will ask for the detail breaking out how this money's being distributed.
We can provide that.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
I was going to do that, but I don't need to know that to vote for this.
That was exactly my feeling, Alderman Payon. I certainly entertain a motion to recommend approval. We're certainly not going to say no.
So moved.
Second.
I mean, there are no strings attached really to the, well, there are very few strings attached to this.
Right.
Can't imagine why anybody would not vote to not accept it.
But other than asking at the council meeting that we have that distribution, all those in favor of recommending approval signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. I was an aye, by the way. All right. Next is SA 2-22, a donation for a park bench.
Yes, this is a donation that was received by Rec and Parks for a bench, and they would like the revenue added so that we can increase their appropriations in order to purchase the bench.
Do we know who donated this?
A family of Mary Bannon.
Do we know who Mary Bannon was?
She's a person who likes to sit on park benches.
Yes, the name is Mary Bannon. I don't know anything about the origins of it or the family or the significance.
Well, again, Mr. Chair, I don't think we're in the business of saying no to things like this, so I would move that a favorable recommendation.
I will second this, but I do have a question for the Recreation Department, and that is what standards are being used for park benches. Can anybody have a bench, or do you have to be able to afford to have a bench? I mean, is there a standard?
My understanding is that for some time we had discontinued the program because we ran out of space for benches, for additional benches, had no need for additional benches. But apparently it's started back up, and I'm not sure where this particular bench is going to be located. But they have a standard design, they have a standard place that they purchase them from. So Rec and Park takes care of all that and just uses the money that's donated to pay for all of that work, and then they always affix a plaque to the bench.
I guess and I appreciate knowing that. I would just like to make sure that you don't have to have, $1,100, or your family doesn't have to have $1,100 to have a worthy, recognition such as a bench or anything else, actually. So how do we make it so that, it's fair to everybody?
Yeah, because if we just open it up without any fee attached, the demand's going to way outstrip the availability of
Well, that too.
locations.
That's a whole nother,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
So maybe we can ask that they come up with some standards for making the determination.
Any further discussion on this supplemental appropriation? We have a motion and a second to recommend approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We do have a request for follow-up information. While we're on Parks and Recs, though, I did ask the question, there was $16,000 cut for greenscape from the budget, and that came to our attention mainly from a lot of the people who do greenscape. And so that's being restored, but the question is that being restored by cutting another program? In which case, do we know what else in Parks and Recs is getting cut? Or would it be appropriate for, and I'd be willing to do this, to ask for a supplemental appropriation from the one-time only fund or some other appropriate fund to make that $16,000 good without hurting another program?
So what happened was that when we were asking for potential budget reductions, Rec and Parks offered that program up as a reduction, so it was taken. So their budget was reduced by the $16,000. They've changed their mind and feel like it's an important program that needs to continue. So I've asked them to identify where they're going to find the $16,000 within their budget to pay for it. So that's where we are right now. The director is working with his divisions to identify small amounts, not a whole chunk where, a program would be dramatically reduced, but to find bits and pieces here and there. Happy to let you know what those are going to be, and then the decision can be made if we want to take that from one-time funding. But this is sort of a self-inflicted wound, unfortunately. So.
Well, I'm not sure it's a wound at all, but because we asked all the departments, and I think the departments were really very diligent in responding to finding reductions in their spending. This one happens to be a reduction that is very much a program prized by the community. However, we also know that there's things like latchkey daycare during the summertime and food programs at the schools during the summertime and things like that. I'm more than happy to ask that we give Parks and Recs an additional $16,000 than to cut one of these other programs that's when another group finds out their program is getting hit, they're going to be chomp, chomp, chomp. I think that Parks and Recs is really one of the, I consult my colleagues on this, really one of the parts of the city that does social services in a real sense. The very thing that we're creating the Office of Social Services, they already are doing a lot of those things, really without us pretty much recognizing them until it goes away or doesn't get fulfilled. So I'm very open to doing whatever needs to be done to help them.
Well, maybe we can continue the discussion then. Let's see what they come up with and what the impact of $16,000 is a significant amount of money, but in the big scheme of things, not that much. So let's see what they come up with and we can discuss options.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Payon.
This is about F-122.
We haven't gotten there yet. I just took advantage of the fact that this last essay was for Parks and Recs.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing everything.
Okay, I'm sorry. We had finished essay 2-22.
Yeah.
We had not yet gotten to, because I took the privilege of imposing on the city manager.
Mr. Chair, do you recall how many millions of dollars we approved for the Rec and Parks budget this year?
It was somewhere between 5 and 7 million total.
Okay. Does that sound? Yeah, that sounds
5, I
about
think.
right.
I would have to open that up and look at it for.
I think it was
sorry.
around.
I've got to open a document to look at the total. And we don't have what we need right here with us, so give me a minute.
I think it was around 5 million.
It's somewhere in that.
Right.
They all start to blur.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trying to.
So, but I know 5 million is a lot of money, but they have a lot of programs that they're running, and these are programs that touch our constituents day in and day out, and they're valued programs. I would suspect when we get to discussion and we talk about the community survey, that we're going to find that there are an awful lot of people who value the services provided by Parks and Recs. And I understand the pool is doing fabulously well and generating a lot of funds, but that's an indication that we're providing a service that people want. So $5 million, and remember, a good chunk of that, a surprisingly large amount of that goes to parks as opposed to recreation.
Well, and take the tennis courts out of operation for a year and see how
Yes.
how people react to that.
Right. And don't put pickleball lines on them and see how people react to that, including the mayor. All right. I think we're ready to move on to FT 1-22, which is a transfer, interestingly enough, in Parks and Recs.
So this is one that was not anticipated. It's really a sort of an indicator that they're being very successful. A lot of people are showing up and they're handling a lot of cash at the pool. But they've had some unfortunate situations there. So we've had to have more frequent police presence there. We've parked a vehicle in front of the pool to try to quell some of those. We think it's time to have a security guard. So we're piggybacking on a county contract to have a security guard. And it's not going to be somebody that looks like an armed security guard. They're going to be in shorts and a polo shirt and just kind of wandering around and keeping things calm. But during all the hours that it's open until Labor Day, there'll be somebody there. And then just on the weekends after that until it closes in October, we'll have a security guard there to just... The lifeguards have had to try to address situations that they just were not prepared to address. So we just think it's time to do that. So that's why we're asking for contingency, because we don't want them to have to take this out of their existing budget. We know that the pool's making a lot more money than what any of us anticipated it would. So the money's flowing back in, but we just need a source to take it from right now.
Committee, Alderman Payne.
Mr. Chair, I'll bring up the same point I was trying to make a moment ago. I think that there's plenty of money in that budget right now. $13,500 for 6 weeks. Labor Day is 6 weeks from today. This is a department that even when the Pip Moyer Center was closed due to the coronavirus, they continued to have employees come in and supposedly clean the place. I mean, how long does it take to clean the Pip Moyer Center? I don't doubt that a thorough cleaning takes a bit of time, but with all employees in and all hands on deck effort, I mean, a day, a week, 2 weeks, not 6 months. And I think they can easily afford to transfer that money from another fund. I don't see why we have to do that right now from the contingency fund. Contingency fund is for an emergencies basically, and this is no emergency. I agree, it may be needed, but this is easily foreseeable, and I don't think we ought to have to pay for their mistake.
Well, somebody's going to have to pay. I have a response, but should we hear from the
Yes,
finance director
please.
first?
Just the total for the whole department, which includes harbor master, is $5.8 million for 22, and we've already asked Rec and Parks to scrape up $16,000 to do the green scrape. So this would be another $13.5 from their budgets, and they did a pretty good job of trimming their budget out, their operating budget.
So my quick response, Alderman Payne, we know this is more than just what I heard from the city manager, protecting the cash. Harken back to a few days ago when an incident occurred at the Nationals ballpark. I mean, this is more than just checking on the cash. This is also helping keep other kinds of peace. Maybe this could have been foreseen, but I don't think the great success of the pool was foreseen. And I think this is what the contingency fund is for, but I'll yield to my colleague Alderwoman Finlayson to respond to this FT.
Well, I have a couple comments. One, I've been over at the pool probably twice in the last 2 weeks, and it is packed, and it is serving the community exactly as we had hoped it would be. So it doesn't surprise me that they have more money than they can manage. And we should add whatever is necessary so that they can operate well and safely. There has been a police car parked out in the front each time, though I've never seen the presence. And so it's not like it's a overarching, type of police presence that would be intimidating. It's not. I think we should remind ourselves that all of our facilities, even when they were closed to the public, were open to staff. And a one-time cleaning is not sufficient. When the pandemic initially hit, we were cleaning after everybody touched a surface. And Pitt Moyer has a gazillion surfaces that have to be maintained on an ongoing basis. So I would just remind us that staff is doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Sometimes we don't see all the nuances of what they're responsible for, but they know, and the public knows. So I think that this is really a small price to pay to make sure that the pool is operating in a safe and efficient manner. So I would make a motion that we support FT 122.
And I'm assuming Alderman Payon, you will not second. I will second, but for the purposes of further discussion, I think that this is a necessary service, but do we know how much money we budgeted for revenue flows from the pool operations? Do we know, is that in excess of the revenues we need to defray the capital costs for the pool, if there are any left, or other costs for the pool? I guess in the spirit of Alderman Payon's question, is this not something that could be funded by unanticipated revenue from the pool, since this is a service that is directly providing things that are needed for the pool operations?
So we did consider that. We do know there's a lot more revenue coming in from the pool and making this revenue source additional pool revenue. But as your finance director, I hesitate to do that because this early on in the fiscal year, we may see that revenue being a lot higher than anticipated, but there may be other general fund revenues that are lower than anticipated, and we don't have enough activity to project that. So we would leave individual revenue sources alone in case this is over, but something else is way under other sources. So I hesitate to take it from that revenue, even though it's obvious there is additional pool revenue coming in.
So how quickly, if this was approved, how quickly would this additional security person be present at the pool?
Yeah, almost immediately. We've already got the bids. We just contacted the company that the county uses, and so they have people available and they're ready to move. If you talk to the pool staff, Jen Jennings and others, it would have been like a week ago
Right.
that they would be here.
Yeah.
But
security. I guess I have feelings for Alderman Payon's point, but it feels to me like this is a security situation. We need to act quickly. If there's excess revenue from the pool, I presume that would fall to fund balance and would therefore be available for other uses. I guess given the my sense of the security urgency here, I would be inclined to vote for this. I don't think we have a process where we can come back later and see how this all falls out, except for the end of the year surplus that shows up, and presumably if there's a surplus, that'll go into the next contingency fund, the next year's budget contingency fund. On the other hand, as the director pointed out, we are early in the fiscal year. The contingency fund, as it says here, is what, 395,000, 97, yeah, 96.5. I'm not interested in big runs on the contingency fund, not that this is a big run this early, but you answered my question, and I guess I'll fall back on that. We have department heads and city managers because they know how to run the city, and they're giving us their advice that this is an appropriate transfer, and if it turns out later on that this falls to fund balance, so be it. So, are there any further comments, or are we ready to vote?
I don't question that there's a need for this. I just question what the source of payment ought to be.
No, I
That's all.
understand. I share your concern about that, but I guess we heard from the finance director that they considered that and still felt that this was an appropriate use of that fund. I see no reason to second guess the opinion of the finance director. Particularly if we were talking about the whole 396.5, that might be a little bit bigger bite, but this is a relatively small bite.
I agree.
So I'm in sympathy with your question, and I think that we need to be doing that, but I guess I'm inclined to accept the advice of the administration that this is the right thing to do at this time, and I think time is of the essence here. We really want to get that security there. Alderwoman Finlayson.
Just a question about the 396.5. It says after the revision, which means after the 13.5 is
Right.
deducted, there is still a balance in
400,
contingency for
correct.
396.5.
Right.
Yes. I can give you a little perspective on the revenue. In FY '21, we had budgeted $65,000 for the pool. We ended up with $124,000, so it's almost twice. But we're in July, and we've started a new year. And so, again, we budgeted $65,000. We've already got close to $34,000 recorded for this year. So it's very likely that this will provide additional revenue, maybe another $60,000 or $70,000 of revenue over anticipated. But all you would need is a shortfall in another revenue source of $60,000, $70,000, and it would offset that. So that's why at this point in time, I wouldn't be comfortable certifying that there's enough additional revenue in that category to support this overall, that we have enough additional revenue overall.
Mr. Chair, I think there should be a notation for next year, the budget 23, that security should be included in the Recs and Parks budget.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right. So, any,
Ready to call the question?
well, I was just going to ask if there's any further discussion, or are we ready to vote? And I hear no further discussion. All those in favor of recommending, or are we approving the FTs? Approving FT, we're recommending approval of FT 1-22, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
So the record show that this passes by a 2-to-1 vote. And I appreciate your questions and your point of view, Alderman Payon. I think that's what we're supposed to be doing in this committee. So thank you for that.
Well, Mr. Chair, particularly after the last budget, I, for one, am paying a lot more attention to transfers, something that was always been pretty much a given for me because it doesn't cost the taxpayer any more money. But I don't have very long to look at these things. But while I'm here, I'm at least going to look a little bit more carefully than I once did.
So on this point, and on the, I have to admit, I didn't, Katie, I apologize, go to OpenGov to see if Granicus gets us down to this level of line item detail. Is this something that would,
You
and
would-
also the 16,000 for streetscape would have shown up?
Yeah, when you break down the revenues, if you would go on to the revenue line item and click on that, you would see what makes up the recreation fees revenue.
Yeah, but I'm
And the
talking
Truxton Pool is one of those accounts.
Right. No, I'm talking about on the appropriation side. If I went into OpenGov to look for the 16,000 for greenscape, I wouldn't see it because we didn't appropriate it.
You wouldn't see it, but we don't have a separate account for greenscape expenses. It would be a
That's really
part
my
of
question.
contractual services or another account within the. Is there? Okay, so there is a separate account called greenscape.
But if we weren't appropriating for
You'd
greenscape,
see a zero. It would be there, but you'd see
it
zero.
will be there but be zero. Okay. So that's a note to the Finance Committee for the future. You really do have to look at all the line item detail. And if I had done that, which I did not, I would have noticed greenscape as a zero. And at budget time, which was the appropriate time, I should have said, wait, I don't want that to be zero. So that's on me for not using open governance to the fullest extent that's available to us.
Mr. Chair, I have had OpenGov open on my iPad since spring. And this weekend, I finally closed it.
Right.
And here we are.
No, and I did look at it clearly superficially. I looked at it during the budget process, but I know I'll get a demerit. I just didn't pick that up. So I think that since we went to the effort, the finance department went to the effort of giving us OpenGov, and I did use it in a lot of other things. I didn't think to look for programs that I knew were important and see what the number was by it. So, but it's there for us, it's a tool. And I, for one, vow to do a better job of using the tool. That concludes our agenda for supplemental appropriations and fund transfers. The last item on the agenda is an update from the finance director.
Okay, so for the Finance Committee, I would say you're going to be on the lookout for the bond ordinance that's coming up for introduction on Monday. We've got it drafted, we got the schedules created, and it's asking for the authority to issue any and all debt that we have currently bonds appropriated for that have not yet been issued. It's a fairly significant number, 36 million, but we will not be issuing all that. We issue debt based on how much we anticipate we're going to spend in the next 18 months. So the number that we borrow will be much smaller. And right now, I'm in discussions with the financial advisors about whether or not we're interested in refunding some of our older debt. We have a couple of opportunities there. And then in the fall, whether we want to continue with our line of credit, which we currently have outstanding for capital projects, or to sell new money bonded debt for the spending, because as you know, rates are currently low still, but they've shown signs of climbing, the borrowing rates. So we're talking about which direction we're going to go with either keeping the line of credit open with that short-term rate or locking into 30-year bonds for a lower rate. So I'm in those discussions right now. Besides that, I'm doing some more interviewing for the assistant director position and haven't made any decisions there yet. What else? We're starting the process of, we've closed the books for June 30, but we have a lot of work and analysis that has to be done in the next few months to pull the numbers together for the FY21 annual report. Anything else? Those are the two major things we have going on.
Trying to remember what we discussed at the FAC meeting. There were a couple of important items on there.
Resilience Authority,
Although
they're talking about that.
That, and we were talking about the continuing work on the spending affordability. I don't remember, I didn't remember to bring my notes from the FAC meeting, but those are usually pretty good meetings if you have the time to dial into, because the fact are a resource for us, and I think they have our city's best interests at heart, and they ask a lot of interesting questions that we don't tend to think of, but they do. So in any event. All right, are there any questions for the finance director? I believe that concludes our business for the day.
May I ask if there's no other business finance-wise for the next month?
No, we'll be working on the things that I just mentioned. It's nice to have a break where there's fewer meetings, so it's a little bit of a vacation for the staff to try to get caught up on everything we're working on. So it's a very productive month because we have to start preparing the financial statements, and
Because
that's...
we're not around, I know why.
No, it just for my time, it gives me more time to work on
Yeah.
larger projects.
Well, don't let us intrude on that, okay?
I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have when you contact me in August. I'm hoping you'll take a vacation too.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
A second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Finance Director, and thank you, Ms. Conley.
Yes, thank you all.
Here and the vast audience, give yourself a round of applause.